Mars, the god of war. Ares of the Greeks, Archangel Gabriel. The Aztec god, Huitzilopochtli. In Babylon, he was Nergal, a desolate desert planet, fourth from the sun. There are those that say life once thrived here. Some say it still does. The estimates of the level of the technology range anywhere from Bronze Age to a technology so advanced they had vacation spots on Enceladus. As far as our reality goes, I think that we were all fascinated even before the face was found. But when that face was found, we were all over it. They didn't waste any time. They started saying that it was just a mesa, and not a very good one at that. We all have a pretty good idea that at the very least life once existed there, and there's a very good possibility that it still does. They seem to think we can't handle it, but I think we can handle it just fine. The Martians, on the other hand, would most likely have the number one rule, and that would be stay away from the Earthlings. That's what mine would be. Theodore Holden and Troy McLaughlin are co-authors of a book called Cosmos in Collision, which posits Jupiter's largest moon, Ganymede, as the original site of human habitation within our solar system. In this video, Theodore Holden describes the overwhelming evidence of previous human habitation on Mars as seen in recent NASA probe images, which is the reason that he, his co-author Troy McLaughlin, and numerous others have originally thought that human habitation within our system must have begun on Mars.
I'm good. I'm ready. Whatever you are, and we got about an hour and a half.
Okay. Okay, you should be able to see my screen on.
I got it.
Okay. I said the first thing I wanted to talk about was Mars. Okay. And
I'm good.
let me just run some of the areas on Bear Fabrique Bio. Okay, at the top you've got two of Ivan Bolivian's Firebirds, right? Jar Petiti. You've got products and books which are not that's sort of probably not ready for prime time just yet, right? Forbidden knowledge, you know, like things which are too good for the American people to have. You know, DDT, the Tucker Carr, whatever, right? All kinds of stuff like that. A decent alphabet for English, that's interesting. Saturn theories, genesis of the Ganymede hypothesis, that you would be interested in. Okay, our Blacktop manned space program. This is the thing we were talking about yesterday. And like I say, you're still with me, right? It's like...
Yeah, I'm with you.
Right, there are three files here, three general areas in this. This is my own take on, you know, Mars images. I've been looking at Mars images since the early 90s, right? I had a copy of that book of Richard Hoagland's and read it, okay? And all you had to work with in those days were those low resolution images, you know, like from the Viking probe. And NASA has always claimed that what you're seeing in that Cydonia area is just a bunch of natural formations, you know, a mesa, which is what they claim that face megalith amounts to. Pyramids, you've got other things which, you know, to many observers, just obviously artificial. They claim they're not. They claim that all you're seeing there is pareidolia. They're lying, okay? Make no mistake, they're lying by omission. It's like they're working at keeping those old images in circulation, because you could almost, starting from the 1976 low resolution images, you could almost make a case that what you're seeing is natural formations, right, in pareidolia. You know, what they're not telling people, and what they're trying to get out of circulation, and what is becoming increasingly difficult to find on the internet as the years go by, are these high resolution images, which they were forced into taking like in 1999 and 2001. Okay, let's look at some of that, right? This first file is called General Mars Images, Satellites, and Rolling Probes. It says those of us who were at least pre-teens in the 1950s remember it well enough. Getting to the moon was all anybody ever talked about in those days. great national purpose, which you heard about and read about every day, right? And then in 1969, he actually did it, right? One small step for man, giant leap for mankind.
Yeah, although the more and more people are starting to think that that whole thing was faked, you know.
I don't believe it was fake. There were several more Apollo missions over the space of the next few years. And then, like, what are we supposed to believe, right? Like manned space programs, been there, done that, time now to get back to serious business, such as running and fine-tuning our welfare state. You actually believe that? Or could it possibly, is that believable? Or could it possibly be that whatever those people saw up there messed their minds so badly that manned space exploration was made into a black op at that point, and most people simply haven't heard any more about it since that time?
You have two camps. You have a camp that says that Mr. Armstrong was recluse because of what he saw up there, and then you have the camp that says he didn't want to lie, so...
I believe he's a recluse because of what he saw up there. Normally,
Yeah.
like I said, conspiracy theory should be the last choice, right? I mean, for explaining anything.
I agree.
But the situation you've got is not normal, right? You've got a situation where you have, like, artificial things for sure on Mars, in all likelihood on the moon, right? And then in all likelihood on Ganymede also, that largest moon of Jupiter's. We'll get to that.
Mm-hmm.
Right, large numbers of rolling probe images coming online, NASA and ESA websites. This is not just NASA, right? The European Space Agency also shows these Cydonia images, and you've got not so much anymore, right? It seems now that they seem to have largely given up on trying to hide this stuff. They used to go to great lengths to try to mess these images up, to smear them using, brightness and contrast settings, and to do other kinds of things. Their charter requires them to post these images online, right? But they've tried to make it so that you can't make anything out of them, right?
Yeah.
Oh, NASA, never a straight answer, right?
Yeah. I heard another good one for that, too, for that acronym. Something about Nazis. Anyways, go ahead.
Right. You've got I mentioned this, you have a dozen Baker's dozen Facebook groups dedicated entirely to going over these Mars rover images pixel by pixel, right? NASA can't do that. NASA's just a government agency. I mean, they do not have the number of eyes it would take to go over all those images pixel by pixel. But the internet does, right? Facebook does, and these Facebook groups do. And the Facebook groups, I believe, have pretty much taken the place of Usenet, which used to be the worldwide BBS system before you had web browsers or HTML.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. What I believe you're seeing now is that I believe that NASA is actually using the Facebook groups to catalog these things, right? I think they appear at times to be.
Yeah.
Now, you've got these two cases that we talked about yesterday, where you've got urban infrastructure, which has been disguised to look as if it were a desert area, just by smearing contrast and brightness.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You've got numerous websites which you can go to, and then all you have to do is get on. You've got enterprisemission.com, which is Richard Hoagland. You've got UFO, whatever that amounts to, right? MarsAnomalyResearch.com. Right, and then Sapinski, the sky. What's up on the sky.com. Right, you've got a number of places like that, and then you've got these Facebook groups, and the one that I would recommend more than any other is Martine Greiny's group, which is called Martian Genesis.
Right.
Okay, and we will, the first indication that you had something really funny going on Mars came like around 96, 97, whatever that was.
Mm-hmm.
EIA 04995, right? You've got footprints in this image. In fact, the lower right-hand corner of this image shows a number of artificial things, including metallic things, right, which are obviously clearly artificial. And then, like evidence that somebody was walking around looking at some of this stuff, you've got like those are not ancient footprints from 10,000 years ago. Those are fairly recent.
Yeah, it's windy.
Right. You've got an example here of what I mean when I say that you need to have the eyes that it takes to go over these images pixel by pixel. What you're seeing in this image doesn't look like much of anything. It just looks like the camera arm or one of the camera arms of the rover, and then just desert, right? This just looks like a bunch of nothing.
Right.
You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
But like what happens when I go to this Gigapan, you've got like a website called gigapan.com where people keep large geological images, right?
Yeah.
Made for panning and zooming. Let me show what happens for this. Look, if I say, let's open this in a new tab, right?
What do you think? Oh, I just got an internal server error.
That's me.
Oh, real quick, what do you think of the thing that NASA says Mars' atmosphere is only 1% that of Earth? I don't believe that. It can't be. How could the parachute stop the rover or anything for that matter with 1% of our atmosphere?
I don't quite know what to make of that. Look, it's like
Yeah.
you've got images which positively show small animals and people, indigenous people,
Yeah.
around on Mars. They must be breathing something. Either that or they've gotten very good at it's something akin to yoga. And they're managing to go for like 30 or 40 or 50 minutes without breathing,
Yeah.
That's a bit far-fetched.
Slow their heartbeat down to 1 beat a minute or something.
Yeah, that's pretty far-fetched. It's
Yeah.
conceivable, but what appears to be the case is that they've never rebuilt the surface on Mars. They're living most of their lives underground. They're coming out for a half hour, an hour in the middle of the day for sunlight and vitamin D, right?
Right. Magnetic field.
Okay, whatever's happening is that the Gigapan link isn't working right now. Okay, so I'm going to just scroll past this. What you're going to see,
Yeah.
if you zoom, if you start with this image here, and if you zoom, you see where my mouse cursor is right now?
Yes.
This is where you're going to find the interesting stuff. Right where the mouse cursor is, more or less, is like, somewhere right around here is the interesting area. If you zoom like about 5 times,
Yeah.
what you can see is this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Here you've got a woman with a sort of a khaki colored pair of slacks and then a black jacket on and some sort of what seems to be the case is that the U.S. government workers are wearing some sort of a minimalistic oxygen tank, right? They're probably not used to breathing whatever they call air on Mars. Okay. You can see the arrow that I've got. You've got this woman standing there with strawberry blonde hair. You've got to her left is what you might think was a boulder, except that boulders generally don't have gull-wing doors like an old 300 SL Mercedes. You see that what I'm pointing at with my mouse cursor here.
Yeah, I see like something that looks like a flag. It's a shadow of a flag. Is that what you're talking about?
No, well, no, this is a door. It's like it's an opening. You see where my cursor is now, that's an opening, and that's like a door of some sort.
Yeah, you know what? I don't see your cursor. I was looking at my cursor.
Okay, can you see my cursor now? It's green. It's over on the left in the white area.
No, I don't see it.
Okay, at any rate, you've got like a boulder, which is really some sort of an ancient building, which has got a door. It looks a little bit like a flag, but what you're really seeing is like a folding door.
Yeah, I can see that.
Okay. In front of the woman is the head of a statue. That's what she's looking at. You can see that. You can see you've got eyes and a nose and, lips and.
Yeah.
And then above there's that red arrow, and above the red arrow, there's what looks like a piece of angle iron sticking out towards the viewer, towards the rover's camera.
I see it.
Okay. All of this stuff is like, it doesn't belong there. If you accept what NASA's trying to tell us, NASA wants us to believe that you've got some sort of army of robots up there now, with no live humans up there. It's like they want us to, and again, nobody makes a vehicle that could roll around Baltimore or Houston for like 3 or 4, 5 or 10 years, without any sort of maintenance, right? Do you really want to believe that anything could roll around this sort of an area for 10, for years without maintenance. I mean, I don't believe that.
Yeah, they're trying to say that the wind was keeping the solar panels clean. That's crazy. I've never
Yeah.
seen wind clean a car.
Somebody wasn't wiping the dust off of the solar panels every couple of days or so. I mean, it wouldn't function very well. This is what we're looking at here. We're looking at an agency. You know that when Barack Obama took over, the first thing he told NASA was that their primary mission in life was helping Muslims with their self-esteem issues, right? Maybe, I mean, to my way of thinking, anybody with any self-respect should have just got up and left, right? I mean, I'm not making that up. Nobody can make that up, right? That's the kind of thing nobody can make up. But these are some of these 1976 images, right, of the Cydonia region.
I remember when I first saw it.
Okay, this is the face on Mars. Everybody, I mean, a lot of people have seen this picture on tabloids. You go up to the grocery store, right, and it's like, aside from how everybody's living in Hollywood, California, you've got this picture sitting around occasionally.
Yeah.
The face on Mars. This is the thing that NASA claims is pareidolia, just some sort of a mesa, right? And you might make a case like that, right? I mean, Richard Hoagland never believed that, even if this image was all he had to work with, Richard Hoagland was calling them liars on account of this. Other people with real credentials have always challenged NASA on this one, just on the basis of these low-resolution images. You've got an area where you've got small pyramids, like this that you see here. And to the right of this image, you've got something which looks like a sort of a dinner bell triangle, which they called a fortress or something. And you've got more than one little pyramid body, and then you've got like a five-sided pyramid, like the Chrysler emblem. Okay, and Mother Nature doesn't do equilateral triangles. Like the long sides of this thing are 1.5 miles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Mother Nature doesn't do straight lines and Bezier curves on a 2 or 3 mile scale. Okay.
Ted, can I enlarge that like I did yesterday with the plus control, or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
On your own screen. Or I could enlarge it for you a little bit. I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. Because I mean, I don't have my reading glasses on, and I can't.
Better?
That's better. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that good.
Down on the next page is the thing that NASA hasn't publicized very much. This is the high resolution image of that same face megalith.
Damn, look at that eye. It looks evil.
This is absolutely artificial. Look, the left eye, the way you'd create something like this is to pile up progressively smaller stones and rocks until you have the general shape and outline that you wanted. You got to understand this thing is like 2.5 miles or so top to bottom, and then maybe, I don't know, 2.5 or 3 miles up and down, and then like maybe 1.5 miles across, right?
That's
immense. This is made to be seen from off planet. This is not made to be seen by people walking around next to it.
Right.
Okay. You've got lips, you've got eyes, you've got nostrils, right? You've got some sort of a headdress.
Mm-hmm.
This guy's wearing, right?
Looks like the right side took a hit.
The wind and sand are coming from left to right in this picture. What they've done, the way they built this thing was to pile up rocks into the general form they wanted, then cover the rocks and stones with some sort of a hard casing like concrete or cement, right?
Yeah.
And then over, I mean, how much time has gone by since the time this was in good shape till now? I don't know, 3, 4, 5, 10,000 years, however, it's been a while. The hard casing has been weathered on the left side, right? And you can see the stones beginning to show through. Where the casings, and then on the right-hand side, on the leeward side, the hard casing is falling away in slabs.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what you see. Now you can see that, like, you've got like the eye on the left eye is, which is on the leeward side, is much easier to see, right? It's like you can see where the casing is falling away from what was the left eye. And I believe this thing has been picked up and then slammed down. And the catastrophes, which sort of wrecked the place.
And it's huge too.
Yeah, okay. If you scroll down a little bit more, you can see my own interpretation of what you're seeing.
Mm-hmm.
Says that the thing has been sort of warped. Okay, the face megalith has been warped by this event which picked it up and slammed it down like that. But you can see where you have nostrils and lips and eyes, and you can see the proportions of the thing, right?
Yes. Did you see Van Flanderen's presentation on this, where he claims that it's like 1,000,000,000 to 1 that it's artificial? I mean that it in favor of it being artificial.
Let me explain. Yeah, Tom Van Flanderen, and your viewers should understand that Tom Van Flanderen was a director of the Naval Observatory. Okay, so Tom Van Flanderen has got serious credentials.
Oh yeah.
It's not some clown or anything like that, right? It's like he said that it was provable that this thing was artificial, and the proof, basically, if you boil it down to what he was saying, it involves the nature of pareidolia, right? And that's a funny word.
Mm-hmm.
Pareidolia generally means that, you can oftentimes look at a cloud formation or rock formation somewhere off in the distance, and you could think you're seeing a picture of Aunt Sally or Uncle John or something familiar, right? It's like you get some sort of a cloud that looks like something or other, but it's invariably the case that as you get closer,
Yeah.
cases of real pareidolia, as you get closer to whatever it is, as you get increasingly higher resolution images, the higher the resolution image you look at, or the closer you get, the less it looks like Uncle John or Aunt Sally or whatever
Right.
it looked like, right? The effect diminishes with distance, with decreasing distance, right? Whereas in this thing,
Mm-hmm.
the higher the resolution you get, the more artificial it looks. You understand what I'm saying? It's the exact opposite of pareidolia.
Right, right. Do you think that this face is just a face, or do you think it's a face of a particular big prominent person? Or I heard someone say might be Adam. That's why I asked.
No, look, I've got no clue. It's like
Yeah.
whatever it's supposed to represent. I mean, we've obviously got, to my way of thinking, we've got like about 200 years worth of archaeological work sitting there in front of us.
Yep.
I don't like the idea of going off into space in the condition of amnesia sufferers, right? Like, not knowing who the hell we are or what our own history is, right? In other words, before we go off into space and feel good about it, we've got to spend the 200 years doing archaeological work both on Mars and on Ganymede more than anything else, right? But it's like, there's other places on the system which are interesting as well, including a moon, right?
Yeah.
If you get some of this basic science right, then you could end up throwing a lot of money away. Now, the Chinese, and this is like, the people at the LaRouche Group,
Mm-hmm. I'm aware of them.
Chinese have just landed on the dark side of the moon, and what they have in mind to do is to, get rich and famous by mining, hydrogen or helium-3, which they believe has been,
Yeah.
accumulating on the dark side of the moon for like about 4 billion years. What's the problem with that?
What did you say? You cut out. What?
I say, what's the problem with that?
What's the problem with the Chinese mining the moon?
No, what's the problem with their thinking that the moon has been sitting there collecting that stuff for 4 billion years?
I don't know. What is the problem?
Yeah, the moon isn't 4 billion years old. That's
Oh, okay. I didn't catch the 4 billion year part.
So somebody's in for rude awakening.
Definitely.
I try to explain that to the LaRouche Group. They don't want to hear about it at any rate.
Oh, that's too bad.
No, at any rate, so you've got this thing sitting there, and this is like, definitely. This is official. It's a monument which looks like a human face. It served some purpose. I mean, there was some reason for it being there, right? I don't know what that reason would be. I don't think anybody does.
Yeah.
At any rate, this descriptive text, this is the 5-sided pyramid, like your Chrysler emblem from Detroit, right?
Yep.
Oh, this is the high resolution of that. And here you've got like, equilateral triangles. I mean, Mother Nature doesn't do equilateral triangles. I mean, not on a,
Mm-hmm.
piece of which is like 1.5 miles long. Things like the long edge is 1.5 miles. You've got buttressing on the corners here. You've got the side, which, to the right of the image, which has obviously been damaged, right?
Right. Yeah.
But you can still see that this is something which is not a natural formation, right? I mean, let's scroll down a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
You've got another pyramid. This is a smaller pyramid, and you've got going from one corner of the thing, you've got some sort of a tunnel going out, and then you've got two things which look a little bit like tennis courts or something down at the end of the tunnel.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and if you scroll down a little bit more, then you've got, my own interpretation of what you're seeing here.
Mm.
If you didn't know better, you see the blue line?
Yeah.
If you didn't know better, you might have thought that you were seeing something other than just a pyramid, right? But the buildup inside that blue line, I think, is just sand blowing up against the other surfaces, right?
I see.
As of right now, this image was easy enough to find like in 2001 or 2002. It's not easy to find anymore. It's like I know I can find it on Bearfabrique, my own website. I don't know where else you'd go to look for this right now, find it easily. Like I say, NASA has tried to disappear these high-res images while keeping the 1976 low-resolution images floating around. It's like lying by omission.
Yeah.
Okay, keep going. That mentions metaresearch.org. I don't know if that still exists, right? That was Tom Van Flander's website. There are other websites sitting around there with some of Tom Van Flander's images and presentations.
I like the crater he shows with the tire tracks going around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The text here talks about the profusion of images coming back from these Mars rovers, right?
Mm-hmm.
It says these images show clear remains of cities and villages with roads, bridges, buildings, and other urban infrastructure, remains of large-scale infrastructure, remains of walls with fitted stones, remains of the foundations of buildings, remaining trees and vegetation, water both flowing and standing. I've seen that in numerous of these Mars images.
I have pictures of it.
Okay, such pools and streams frequently seen in near proximity to artifacts of past habitation, mechanical junk and debris strewn across the sands. Most of those kinds of items are obviously artificial, but of unknown usage. Occasionally, you see something easily recognizable: gear wheels, cogs, tires, axles, funnels, padlocks, common items, right?
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me.
It's okay.
Gateways, portals to underground areas. Like I said, the people that live there are living underground. They've never, I don't see any evidence in any of these images they've ever tried to rebuild the surface.
Yeah. Yeah, I see the glass tunnels too. They're very intriguing.
One of Mars' small moons, Phobos, turns out to be artificial. Okay, and this was known even as early on as the Eisenhower administration. Just from orbit parameters, they knew that this thing was not solid, right? It was, you've got claims on the internet that one of the Russian probes has taken penetrating radar soundings on Phobos and seen rectangular interior spaces. Okay.
And heat signature.
Yeah. Real moons are supposed to be made out of dirt and green cheese, and that's supposed to reflect light all over creation.
I agree with that.
Okay, Phobos appears to be metallic. It looks as if it were made out of metallic strakes. Before you even have the color images, you had.
Did you were you aware of the two moons of Mars in the Gulliver's Travels story that was written in 1790, I think? And it could be a lucky guess, but they got the orbit times right. How could they do that? Jonathan Swift.
Yeah, I don't know. So you might have been working with information which has not been lost over the years, right? I mean, I just don't know. You've got portals and gateways to underground areas. You've got this artificial moon. You've got color images now, which are called HIRISE, H-I-R-I-S-E, right? The University of Arizona Space Program. And you all you have to do is get on Google and type in, Phobos high rise. Well, let me do that for a moment. Let me get over here and
Okay.
just type in Phobos high rise. Okay, these are the high rise images. I don't know what it is with this. It's like, oh, okay, we just got a color back. Okay, here we go. This is
Yeah,
Phobos.
there, right there, yeah.
This appears to be made of metallic strakes. Richard Hoagland was saying, even before you have these color images, that you could almost count the rivets. He said that, like, looking at even the black and white images that you had of Phobos before 2008, you could all but count the rivets.
Is that the body with the monolith on it that looks like a tombstone?
There's an anomaly. There's a thing which looks like a tower rising out of Phobos, which may have been a docking tower or something. This is like an ancient space station, like 14 or 15 miles across, right?
Yeah.
We don't build things on a scale like that. If we were to if some government agency wanted to build something like that, starting from Earth now, there's no way you could do it. It's like, if you built it on Earth, you'd never get it into space. And if you were going to try to build something like that in space, how would you do it? I mean, you're going to have an army of workers up there in space doing what, right? Wearing spacesuits? I mean, what happens if one of them has to use the restroom, right? You can have, like, Johnny on the spots out there in space, or, like,
Oh, I'm sure they'd figure it out. They'd figure if they had to do 7 steps, they'd figure it out.
No, I mean, I think I could tell you how this was constructed, right? But I mean, it's a very strange explanation.
Oh, I love strange explanations.
Okay, what I believe to be the case is that where, from reading through Velikovsky's materials, that Venus is supposed to have been electrically, like, you're talking about electrical fissioning, right? I mean, ejected from one of the gas giants. I mean, most likely Saturn. I believe that the people living on Mars had been able to control that process. That they had somehow or other caused, Saturn to eject something which they intended to use, like a metallic geode, which they just hammered into what you're seeing here. Okay.
Yeah. Would that be something called the Lucifer experiment?
No, this is outside the realm.
Okay.
Let me get back to what we were looking at here. It's like, Mars images, cities and villages, right? You see this is basically, I mean, looks like a desert.
Right. That's Hale Crater.
Looks like a bunch of nothing. I had to convince myself that the people that were making the claims that I was seeing, I mean, I had to convince myself they weren't just smoking too much reefer. What you do is you download the image, and you don't download the JPEG image. JPEG is a lossy process, right? It's like, download the TIFF image, which is lossless, about 30 megabytes, right? And sit there and screw around with that image, just using adjustments for brightness and contrast. And this is what turns up when you do that. Like, oh my, that doesn't look like a desert anymore. That's urban infrastructure. You've got buildings there.
Yep.
You've got buildings, you've got all kinds of things which don't belong in a desert, right? Now, this is beyond lying by omission. This is lying. This is putting out a false story to the American taxpayers and people who are paying for all this stuff.
Yeah, they don't really care much about that.
Okay, there's another city area and this was fairly easy to demonkey, right? It's like, you could get somebody wanting to claim that what you're seeing here was like JPEG artifacts. No, they're not. I mean, I've worked with JPEG coding. JPEG, smears noise around, right? It's like there's no way in the world that JPEG encoding is ever going to create anything like that. And besides, we're not even talking about JPEG. It's like, remember I said I downloaded a TIFF image.
Right.
Anyway, even if I had downloaded a JPEG image, it's like it wouldn't do anything like that, you know.
Yeah.
Here, you're seeing something which is a little bit more obviously urban infrastructure. You're seeing in the middle of this thing, you're seeing a sort of a bridge, right, where you've got vanishing point perspective in this. You've got like at least one bridge, roads, buildings, God knows. You know, this was a little bit more involved to try to demonkey, right? But it's like, you know, you had to do a little bit more than just, you know, fooling around with brightness and contrast. You know, somebody managed to figure out that this looked, you know, like a little bit more than just a sandy desert area, right? And then they managed to dig that out of it, right? And I mean, I also managed to just download the base file and follow the same set of steps, and like, yeah, it does start to look like that.
Looks like infrastructure to me.
Oh yeah. You've got areas where you can see urban infrastructure, and where you can see cities and like towns and villages, right? These are, you know, you're seeing buildings here which are sort of worn. There's a windward and a leeward side of this. Well, leeward side is on the left of these buildings. The corners on the left are still straight.
Oh yeah.
You're seeing terracing and you're seeing buildings.
Yep.
This is like another sort of a thing which looks like, you know, like suburban infrastructure. That's like one of these chaos regions that they talk about. Fitted stones.
Right.
Right.
Yep. I've seen those. Those are interesting.
This, I don't know. This could be something that may or may not be, right? It's like there's all kinds of stuff. Whatever this is obviously artificial.
Oh, yeah. That, you know, it just looks different.
Yeah, I mean, this is like, here you've got Bezier curves, and you know, you've got like a metallic piece of something or other. Like I said, just mechanical junk and debris strewn across the sands. In this picture that you're seeing now, you've got the remains of a gear wheel. You can see this.
Yep.
Okay. You've got some sort of an ornate box sitting here. I have no idea what that would be, but, you know, a casket or something, or, you know, that's not a rock.
Well, that picture has been deliberately fudged. You can just tell by looking at it.
No, this is a zoomed picture.
Why? Okay, because it looks like it's in strips.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I know the reason it looks like it's in strips is because it's back at the limit of the. You don't have flying drones, camera drones like with these rovers, right? It's like the only thing that they're really doing is using the highest resolution camera that they can use, and they're rolling around and they're taking image of some of the pictures you see are things which are a half a mile or a mile from the rover.
Uh-huh. Okay. I got it. Yeah. Almost looks like tombstones, like a graveyard.
Okay, this is some other kind of a mechanical thing.
Yep, I see that.
Be a valve cover or something. I mean, you know, it doesn't take much imagination. Here you've got something. I mean, does that look like a rock to you?
Well, it's hard to say, really. Are you saying it's metallic?
It's not a rock. You've got a completely flat surface. I mean, you've got something which is, is obviously artificial. You know, I've shown some of these images. You know, like I've posted some of these images, like on, you know, the Thunderbolts forum site, and I got people, you know, just swearing up and down, "Oh, that's just a rock, Holden. What are you talking about? You're smoking too much dope or something?" You know.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you can't really argue with that. You know what I mean? It's like, you know, the evidence here is mostly graphic. It's mostly, you know, to a reasonable person, to my way of thinking, this is not a rock, right? I mean, this is some kind of an artificial thing. I mean, no way to tell what it was. You've got, you know, this, for instance, I mean, that could be like a sign on a barber shop, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I see that.
Not a rock. Looks sort of like a bronze manhole cover.
Sure does, yeah.
I mean, you got no idea what it was, right? But I mean, this is not something that just occurs in nature. You know, there's no reason to believe that anybody ever dragged a bronze manhole cover up to Mars, you know, like in one of those spacecraft, right?
Well, yeah, now also I'm looking at the blue tint in the rocks. I've never seen blue rocks before.
Yeah,
You see that?
the color may or may not be believable, you know, it's like, but nonetheless, the thing that you're seeing here is not something which occurs in nature. This here, you've got something which to me is like a funnel, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I say, sometimes you see common things lying around. Here you've got what appears to be a propeller blade. It could either be a fan blade or it could be a propeller for a ship.
Yeah, they sure blurred it.
I've seen the remains of boats and ships. Here
Yeah.
you've got what appears to be a wooden beam of some sort, right? It's like you find, well, like I've seen foundations of buildings and the remains of, you know, just buildings which you don't have much left of, right? And this appears to be a wooden beam. You've got like all kinds of things which don't belong there if Mars is a dead world, right? And this is, you know, you've heard me say that, you know, you've had the one guy who I believe has done a huge disservice to the Thunderbolts group. You know, in these presentations, you know, like Mars, the lightning-scarred planet, right? You can attend one of these hour-long presentations and walk out believing that Mars was nothing more than a collection of rocks and electrical scars, right? Now, you do have rocks on Mars. You do have electrical scars, and an awful lot of the things which look like rocks are rocks. That's a pretty good reason for something looking like a rock, right? But then you've also got too many things which aren't rocks sitting up there.
Well, it's our wonderful education system, and the scientific dogma has everyone in their left brains. They're not allowed to use any kind of a instinct or intuition.
Yeah.
That gets people afraid to touch it. They don't want to be labeled.
I don't want to talk about things which anybody can see in Thunderbolts videos, right? I mean, those guys are better
Yeah.
materials than I am. It's like what I wanted to talk about today was the 3 or 4 things which are sort of like taboo topics on Thunderbolts and a number of other venues, right?
Yeah.
Small animals, right? I mean, to me, this is obviously enough. It's the ground squirrel.
But I can understand why they are like they are. They're trying to break into the mainstream science, you know.
They're trying to break into academia, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Yeah.
Yeah, nonetheless, I've had people thought I was jerking them for a long time, looked at this, and said, oh my God, Ted, that's a squirrel. But no kidding.
Yeah. I know that's crazy. I know you're familiar with Mr. I can't remember his last name now, Mr. Hall, who's claiming that these are on Vancouver Island, and that's one of them. What do they call them? Creatures there that live there?
Yeah, it's a lemming.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's not a lemming. That's a ground squirrel. And you know, the other thing about Spitsbergen Island is that, like, the topography of those islands off of Canada are not what appears like in page after page after page after page of these Mars images, right? It's a different kind of topography.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, you're not seeing the same kinds of things. Let me see if I can bring this up on a separate. Here's the image that ground squirrel. The little squirrel is down there in the lower left area of the image. Okay, you can see that somebody had to be going over these images pixel by pixel before you ever saw the ground squirrel.
People can be amazing at what they can do.
Can you not see my cursor at all, or?
I can. I see something fluttering around, but I don't see your cursor.
You see my cursor over on the left of the image? It's green.
Yeah, I know. You said that it's green. I don't see no cursor on my screen.
Okay, it's if anybody else can see it.
Do you have maybe an option to show cursor or hide cursor?
No, you either see that or you don't, right? It's like the technology is just not there.
Yeah.
At any rate, that's the NASA image of that ground. So, I could take you, if we were sitting here both in my room, it's like I could take you right to the point, where the ground squirrel is lying between these two rocks, right? You've got openings to this. This is something which shows like on Google Earth, or Google Mars rather. Okay, so you've got some fairly large openings to underground areas. You've got this thing which we've gone over.
Mm-hmm.
This woman sitting there looking at the statue.
Yeah, the strawberry blonde. Imagine there's two women and they're both strawberry blondes. That's interesting.
Yeah, look, it's like this is a case MSL 1049, right? The 100 millimeter camera. As you zoom in on this,
Oh, there's an arm.
you've got a woman looking at the rover.
Sure do.
Rover from behind a wall, sort of. She's standing in a doorway, which is a sort of a cave. This is like Fred Flintstone and Barney Rubble, right? Living in a sort of what's left.
That's
A human. The human visual system does a very good job of recognizing familiar forms.
yeah.
Human musculature and arms and shoulders and legs and hips and all these kinds of things. The human visual system does a very good job. This is a woman, not a U.S. government worker. I mean, a U.S. government worker wouldn't be peeking around a corner looking at the rover like she didn't know what it was.
She looks like she's wearing like a light purple coat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you zoom a little bit more, then
Okay, I see it better now. Yeah. That is something else there.
Oh, it gets better.
Oh, I know.
Here you've got another woman standing at a sort of a counter. And remember I said that in this picture there were also several things which appear to be doorways into underground areas.
Right.
Subterranean areas, which I've marked here.
Mm-hmm.
As if they were all purchased back at Home Depot or Lowe's.
Yeah.
Right?
It does.
See what I'm saying?
Yep.
You've got like a guy that shows in one of these images, this is not pareidolia.
The speaker.
Yeah. That's not pareidolia.
No, it's not.
You have you have statues, right? These people were big into statues. So you have to separate like cases of live humans from statues, but it's not that hard to do.
Ted, scroll back up on that. I mean, come on. That is something somebody made. You can see the guy with his arms crossed and his little beard and his little turban or whatever he's wearing. That's artificial.
That's not a rock.
No.
Okay? Here we've got like a little girl, and this is not a statue either. A 5,000-year-old statue isn't going to have glossy hair like that.
Yeah, that's real hair. The only one problem with me is I'm trying to figure out where the hell her body is.
She's lying prone on the ground behind a rock, okay? And it's like there's a little bit of a rise in the ground she's lying on. She's looking at the rover again, like just sort of peeking at it from behind something, like she doesn't know what it is.
Oh, so her body is like on the other side of the hill.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. If she was a statue, then the statue would have fallen on its face. And if the statue was standing there, then she'd be staring up into the sky, right? Nobody makes a statue of somebody staring up into space.
Or looking off to the side.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I see that. Yeah.
This is my own. This is my own take on just as close as I could come to.
That blows me away right there. That first picture, the color one.
Same. Let me see if this picture might still be there. It's like
creepy looking.
Oh yeah, but you can see the little girl is she's not in one of the corners of this thing. She's like about 2/3 of the way to the right and 1/3 of the way up from the bottom. You can see.
Right in the bottom.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I see her. Oh, okay. So she's tied. There is a big rock there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
You get close. The proportion.
Yeah.
That's the one that gets me right there.
This is the grand prize.
That's undeniable.
Yeah, this is Martine Griney. And here you've got what I call the girl in the yellow smock, okay?
Yeah.
And these colors are there. These are not, the colors have not been added into this picture. I mean, again, she's trying to, you've got the rover's camera taking a picture of something half a mile or two-thirds of a mile away.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got like this little girl sitting on a rock in front of what looks like Chinese architecture, sort of a pagoda roof.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. And I see she has like weak legs. That might be due to the gravity, on Mars, because it's like.
I don't know. I don't know why you're seeing her legs look the way that they do in the picture.
Yeah. They look
Maybe
funky.
something to do with the photography, the cinematography.
Her upper torso looks perfect.
Right.
Another strawberry blonde.
Somebody might still try to say, well, that's just a rock, Holden. You're smoking too much,
No, that's not a rock.
That's not a rock. Let me tell you the problem you've got trying to claim that's a rock. I mean, rocks don't get up and walk away when it gets to be time for dinner or time to go to bed, right? Little girls do that. You've got two pictures of this exact same spot taken from different angles from, like a day apart or day and a half apart, whatever that was, right?
I have that picture. Yeah.
One of the pictures shows the little girl sitting there on the rock. The other one just shows the rock, and the little girl is gone.
I have shown that. Yeah.
And like I say, rocks don't get up and walk away when it's dinner time.
No, they sure don't.
Yeah. Now, let me read you some of this. All of this, I believe, is what is behind the NASA secrecy. Anything else they could have at least come up with some feeble attempt at an explanation for without having to totally toss and jettison their entire theory of a history of our solar system, or at least without having to look flagrant about it. Assuming that NASA actually has made contact with indigenous humans living on Mars, a number of questions arise, right? So do these people know much more about human prehistory than we do, have better records going back to and possibly beyond the catastrophes than we do, right? Do they know anything about antediluvian civilizations on our own planet or other bodies within our own system, which we don't know? Do they have any physical or mental capabilities that we don't have? Do they have any technologies we might be interested in? Does contact with us represent any danger to them or vice versa, right?
Yeah.
Keeping big secret. Keeping secrets invites conspiracy theories. That's the problem, right?
Yeah, it sure does.
NASA should not be keeping secrets like this.
Absolutely.
It's like, we pay their salaries. It's like we should be getting this information.
Of course we should.
This is that's the problem. It's a big problem here. Let me go back. Remember, I said there were 3 files here.
Yeah.
The third file here.
Yeah, we got a half an hour, so.
Okay, the third file here says the question of electrogravitic propulsion and how the trip to Mars might have been shortened. I don't picture a human astronaut surviving a trip to Mars via any kind of a vehicle powered by rocket engines. It's like it would take a year. It would take 10 months to a year, right? And it's like you'd have to deal with the Van Allen belt. And you'd have to be, what else would you have to deal with? I mean, you go stir crazy, right? I mean, they say that Christopher Columbus took like about 2 months to get to the Americas.
Right.
And it's said that his men were on the edge of losing it when he finally, at the point at which he got here. If they hadn't found something fairly quickly, they would have been in very bad shape.
You can't go to Mars in a firework.
No. Okay, all you can do is make educated guesses. I mean, I can tell you what I know. Okay, I have like 2 or 3 people that I associate with that, that are connected to some of these kinds of projects, right? I mean, what they tell me is that it's most likely not NASA in charge of this project.
No, I wouldn't think so.
Likely the USAF Space Command. NASA is more like a PR firm.
A front.
NASA could easily be operating these rovers once the rovers get there, but I don't think they're in charge of the project. NASA's just a government agency. NASA cannot materialize money in trillion-dollar quantities just out of the void, right? The Pentagon can do that.
Right, right.
Catherine Austin Fitts, talking about dollars and whatnot, and like, has enough money gone missing from the Pentagon's budget to pay for a manned space program on a black op basis? The answer is yes.
Yeah, trillions.
Yeah, trillions of dollars. What is it you need to get? What is it you need to get out into the void, right? To get out towards Alpha Centauri or something like that. You need two things, to my way of thinking.
Mm-hmm.
You need compute power. You get this Ben Rich. Let me open this file here. You get this Ben Rich made this statement. He said that, this is the picture which I may be looking at the wrong way. I don't want to tell anybody. I should take this picture out of this.
Oh, I like that picture. Right? What's wrong with it?
It sure as hell does look like somebody working on the rover, doesn't it? But there's another possible interpretation of the picture.
What's that?
It's a long story.
Okay.
But this one may really be a case, an extreme case of a coincidence. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to put money on this one at this point, so I would say,
They're pouring something into it.
Right.
Yeah. I guess that's one that everybody will, it's too obvious, so it can't be,
It seems to me like I would almost bet the farm that we do have people on Mars at this point. I mean, just maintain these rovers.
Well, we already have quantum computing. They're using it.
The two things that we needed to get out there, really, were like compute power density and propulsion, right? We needed something better than rocket propulsion, and we needed compute power density that we never had until the early to mid 80s. I'm saying that like you had to be able to plot courses in space, right? It's not easy to do.
Yeah.
What did they said about the B-29s just flying, forget about bombing Japan, right? But like just trying to get from California to Hawaii.
Yeah.
The navigators were off by 1 degree or something like that end up out there in the open ocean.
Right.
And run out of fuel, right? And they'd have to swim.
Yeah. That's why you need a fuel that's just never ending.
Yeah. Okay. It's like, you'd be talking about Biefeld-Brown propulsion, right? Interesting.
Electricity.
Yeah, you had to have two things, right? And I believe that, see, Ben Rich claims that we have these capabilities by 1993, right? And that sort of jives with my own times. My own reading of the time frames involved say that the point at which you would have started to have these things, you would have had the Biefeld-Brown propulsion starting from the 1960s, right? But the compute power density, you never had until the mid-80s, right? With the Motorola 68020, 68030 family of chips, right?
Mm-hmm.
A key person at the Skunk Works, Lockheed, the man responsible for the F-117. He's called the father of stealth, right?
Mm-hmm.
The question, there's an interesting discussion here. I've got a link to that. Question involves a quote which reads, purportedly from Rich. Okay, stated during a 1993 alumni speech at UCLA, we already have the means to travel amongst the stars, but these technologies are locked up in black projects that would take an act of God to ever get them out to benefit humanity. Anything you can imagine, we already know how to do. One reply to the question as to a source for that quote was exceedingly interesting. It sounds like Jan Hartson is the source of these quotes, right? This was posted on a forum in 2006. Josh, I'll answer for him as I have the data. Jan Hartson's the director of MUFON, UFOs, right?
Yeah.
And it is he who heard the statements. It so happens that Jan was the source of the rumor that Ben Rich made statements in a presentation he gave to a group of engineers, which happened to be members of a UCLA alumni group, who were invited to hear the presentation March 23rd, 93. The late Ben R. Rich, who knows his father's self, Knowing Jan, I called him to clarify what Rich said at this presentation, UCLA engineering alumni. Here's what Jan, a senior at the project executive of Boeing, told me about Ben's presentation. He showed slides and went through the history of the skunk work, showed pictures of U-2 and SR-71, and drones no one had seen before. The kicker was the last slide. It showed a black disc headed for space. He showed this, and he made the statement, we now have the technology to take ET home. But in other words, he said, as of the early 90s, we were spacefaring. We could get beyond our own solar system. Subject of B-cell brown propulsion. Okay, Paul LaViolette describes the situation.
Love his work. I watch him a lot.
Paul LaViolette is serious also. I mean, I've seen him at a couple of these Thunderbolts conferences.
Yeah, he's good.
And what he says, this is interesting. He says that in December of 1955, Aviation Report noted that corporate interest in anti-gravity research was widening. Okay, electrogravitics efforts widening, right? Companies studying the implications of gravity are said in a new statement to include Glenn Martin, Convair, like the B-58 Hustler, right? Sperry Rams, Sikorsky, Bell, Lear Incorporated, Clark Industries. In other words, you have major corporate interest in this stuff, starting from the mid-50s, so that you have to figure. And then it just sort of disappeared off of everybody's radar screens, right? It got sucked up to black op type stuff.
Yeah, well, they had publications and magazines that were stating, the G machines are coming, the anti-gravity. They were talking, and then all of a sudden it just died right at that time.
I'm saying that you have to assume that 10 years later, by 1965, they would have had a pretty good handle on this stuff.
Do you remember as a kid growing up when we would picture the year 2000 and people would have flying cars? When are we going to get flying cars, for God's sakes?
Yeah. People can't even drive the kinds of cars that they have, right? I mean,
God, it would be a mess.
It would be terrible. Okay, we spoke about gravity, and you also have taken a look at that presentation of mine, like on the Ganymede hypothesis. And you said we're going to do this in 3 segments. Okay, so we're going to have to save some of this stuff for the next.
Absolutely. We'll do this in a few installments.
A few installments, yeah, but you get the idea, right? It's like Albert Einstein tried to claim that gravity was a 3-dimensional, some sort of a 4-dimensional differential geometry kind of a thing. You can't start with that and believe that it ever could have changed very much on the surface of our own planet in relatively recent times, within the last 50,000 years or thereabouts. But it's a very easy demonstration that it has, right? And that these large dinosaurs would be crushed by their own weight in our present world. They never experienced gravity the way that we do at all. No conceivable way they could have, right? They'd be annihilated by the square cube problem. I mean, you lose part of weight ratio as you get bigger no matter what you do, right? Weight is proportional to volume, which the cubed figure, strength is proportional to cross section of bones and muscles, which is a squared figure. If you double your physical dimensions, you go to sleep and you're 6 feet tall, you wake up and you're 12 feet tall. You've got a factor of 2 that gets figured 3 times. For volume, width, breadth, height, 2, 4, age, you're going to be 8 times heavier. You're only going to be 4 times stronger. Because the factor of 2 only gets squared. It doesn't get cubed for cross section. And that says, you can obviously only, cut your power to weight ratio in half so many times and still stand up and walk, be able to function at all, right? And it's like the large dinosaurs would be way outside of that calculation in our present world. Excuse me.
Oh, that's okay.
At any rate.
That's good stuff. I've watched that several times. You all right?
Yeah, I'm okay. It's like, when I talk for any great length of time.
I get a raw throat too many times.
The TR3B, right? I mean, the TR3B, if I had to put money on it, I would assume the TR3B it's an interstellar vehicle. It's something which is made to get looks at places like Alpha Centauri. You have to assume that they've had a pretty good look at Ganymede by now. It's like certainly I think Troy and I have gotten enough attention over the last, starting in 2012. I think we've gotten enough attention that filtered in somehow or other. It's like, that they've had a look at that.
It's been estimated that it produces 10,000 Tesla, at least. 15 Tesla will elevate a frog.
Yeah. Look, I'm going to...
5 Tesla, I think. I can't remember, 15 or 5.
Right.
But if you had 10,000 Tesla, that thing's got its own, it would have its own gravitational sphere. I mean, it would be in its, right?
You've got people that claim to have seen the TR-3B, what appears to look like 20 or 30 G maneuvers right now. You know that 8 or 9 G will kill a human.
Oh, yeah, I got video of it.
What I've had people tell me is that your normal laws of physics go out the window.
Right.
You start talking about something that operates the way that, that a Biefeld-Brown propulsion vehicle would operate, right? That, it would eliminate the problem that you would have with dust traveling at relativistic speeds. It would eliminate the problems that you would have with the Van Allen belts and all these other problems that you have trying to get to Mars, right?
Right.
When you do a search on constant acceleration, which is what you'd have to get to Alpha Centauri, then you start seeing a lot of, Google, right? You start seeing a lot of stuff about Albert Einstein and relativity, right? Well, I mean, that's rubbish.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not any sort of real limitation.
No.
You're not going to come back and you be like 35 years old and all your friends are dead from old age, right? That's not going to happen. They made a movie about something like that about several years ago, right? It's called Interstellar.
Oh, yeah. You were into this at a very young age. I mean, you were a teenager, right?
I'm 72 years old now, okay? So that
Okay, right. So Velikovsky was still alive, and you met him?
That's correct. I saw Velikovsky at that conference at McMaster University in Canada.
That's amazing.
I had been reading Velikovsky's books a couple of years prior to that, right? I mean, I discovered Velikovsky after I got out of college.
Okay. What year?
71, 72.
Okay. And, okay, I'm trying to think back. Nixon was president.
Yeah.
Yeah, 70. Oh, so you went to this university and saw Immanuel Velikovsky speak and then met him afterward?
I spoke to him briefly. I asked him some kind of a question about gravity and dinosaurs at the time. I can't remember what the...
So you had the wheels already turning.
That's something I'd wondered about, before I ever read about Velikovsky or, in other words, I knew there was an insoluble problem with dinosaurs. I mean, even when I was a college student.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. I mean, I was so in love with the T-Rex that I didn't even think about things like that,
Okay, elephants barely can walk around on 4 legs at 5, 6, 7, 8 tons, right? It's like
Yeah.
a Tyrannosaur could be like 8, 9, 10, 11 tons and could be hopping around on 2 legs. I don't think so.
No.
That doesn't work.
That intrigues the hell out of me.
Oh, that's intriguing. That's more than intriguing. Now, look, it's like if I go back to just the front page for Bear Fabrique here.
We got 14 minutes.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna have to. I don't.
Okay, if you can't make it, that's no problem. I got to go in 14.
No, look, it's like I didn't realize. I mentioned this to you yesterday. I've got both of these PDF files sitting here. You can just click on them, right? I've got one which there's a short and a long version. Okay, Telepathy in Ancient Times short version.
Mm-hmm.
It's like about 4 or 5 pages, and then there's what amounts to a book.
Was that the one you showed me yesterday?
Look, Telepathy in Ancient Times, the long version is this version that talks about Ka and the Old Kingdom of Egypt and what all Ka amounted to. Right.
And I want to discuss Ganymede too because I like that theory, Ted. I think it has.
The Ganymede hypothesis is the most major thing that I've ever.
Yeah.
far the most intriguing thing that I've ever worked on. Okay, that's basically,
You know how sometimes something will just strike you as being true?
Share a native axial tilt with the Sun. The remaining other planets do not. A startling question arises. Is it possible that our solar system is, in fact, a collection of original native planets catastrophically displaced by the later arrival of a group of captured rogue planets? Is there possibly a period in our solar system's ancient history when the planets Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, Mars, Venus, and even Earth were nowhere to be seen, and Jupiter reigned supreme with the Sun? In observing other solar systems, we can see that gas giants often orbit closely to their host star, and that many of these so-called hot Jupiters may be brown dwarf stars, complete with their own collections of moons. If our solar system originally began with only Jupiter and Mercury as its original native planets, evidenced by their axial tilts being the same as the Sun's, then it would not be amiss to suggest that Jupiter may have shared the same orbital characteristics of many gas giant exoplanets being discovered today. The problem here is that many of these hot Jupiters are too close to their suns to suggest they or their moons might be habitable. They are simply too hot. However, there are a few gas giant exoplanets that have been discovered orbiting their host star in what is called the habitable zone, and these give hope to the theory that their moons may support the needed attributes for the emergence of life as we know it. Should closer inspection of these habitable zone gas giants prove them to be brown dwarf stars, that is something entirely possible given the blurred lines between gas giants and brown dwarfs, then the possibility of liquid water moons becomes enticingly likely. Brown dwarf stars are known carriers of water, sometimes copious amounts of water, so it is entirely likely that any moons orbiting them will accumulate a portion of this water.
yeah,
That's what, when I first heard that, it did it with Saturn theory too, but then when I heard about you and found out about your hypothesis, it just struck me like Saturn theory did, like this has got to be it, especially from the findings of Elaine Morgan.
yeah. We have not, I mean, we haven't answered every question anybody's ever going to have about human origins. We haven't answered the question of where the first humans in the universe appeared, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've pretty much answered the question, where did the first humans within our own solar system appear? Which is not Earth, right? This is going to be this largest moon of Jupiter's, Ganymede, right? But, like I said, we haven't answered every question, but some of the questions which we have answered are very big ones. That's the thing that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We've answered the question as to the relationship between Cro-Magnon man and the people of Genesis. We've answered the question as to humans not being related to hominids. For any hominid to have ever evolved into a human, he'd have to have lost everything he needed to live, right? He'd have to have lost his fur while you had ice ages going on. He'd have to have lost almost all of his night vision while trying to make it as a land prey animal surrounded by predators which could see very well in the dark.
And develop a shoulder that can throw.
He'd have to have lost almost all of his sense of smell.
Yeah.
While trying to make it as a land prey animal. And that obviously doesn't work, right? That would just making an effortlessly free meal for every predator that ever laid eyes on him, right? Whereas an aquatic mammal doesn't really need much of a sense of smell.
No.
Elaine, there are two ways you could look at Elaine Morgan's thesis. You could look at it as another version of evolutionism, in which case it's just another flavor of BS. Or you could look at it as a theory of human adaptation, in which case it's the best theory that's ever come down the road, but it's never gotten any traction in academia. There's two reasons for that, right? It's like, there's no physical evidence of it. There's no fossil evidence of an aquatic ape anywhere that anybody's ever found. The other problem with Elaine Morgan's theory is that there's never been a body of water on this planet that would be safe for humans to live in.
Yeah, no doubt.
You know, it's like it's a perfectly good theory. It just needs another kind of a world to happen on.
Well, there's no way we could have came from this planet.
No. Look, it's like I've got to take off at this point. I've got to get back. I do have this other thing that you heard that other call about.
Oh, okay. You got to go?
Yeah. I've got to go here, Greg.
Oh, that's cool. I'll get in touch with you through email. I enjoyed it, Ted. Thanks, man.
Okay.
It was
Take
awesome.
care.
Okay.
Catch you later.
All right. We'll talk. Okay. Bye.
Right. And hang up the Skype call.
Yeah. How do I do that?
I'll do it.
Hit the button? All right. Ted. Take care.
There are numerous reasons for being interested in Mars, including possible answers to some or all of the questions. Do the indigenous people of Mars know any more about the history of our system than we do? How did they build the monstrous structures at Cydonia? How was Phobos constructed? Did some number of people from our system try to escape the system altogether? If so, is there any way of knowing which way they went or where they might have ended up? Do the present racial groups on Earth amount to people from different bodies within our system having been brought to Earth to give them the greatest shot at surviving? Earth being the largest rocky bottom in the system, and so on and so on. I watched a few presentations by Mike Barra on Mars. He is Richard Hoagland's partner on the Enterprise mission website, I believe, and he has some very interesting insights as well. For example, he brought up the fact that this comic book came out in 1958 about the face on Mars, and putting that with the Jonathan Swift information, there are some people who know the truth right here on Earth. But of course, it's kept from us, the plebes, which gets to be an old record after a while. I understand why they have to have top secrets for military and that, but they keep everything from us. That's just not right. We're good tax-paying citizens that deserve the truth. Another thing was I got from him was in 1924, they asked all the radio stations in America to not broadcast for one day because they wanted to send signals to Mars and receive them. At the time, Tesla was saying that he was receiving signals from Mars, and they had a good laugh about that in the paper, but Yale University put on this experiment and they did receive a repeating message from the red planet in return, and it looked like this, which Mike equates to some guy named Voldemort or something. I don't know. I don't watch those movies, but I think it's curious that we get another face from Mars. There is many very peculiar things about that planet, and that there is some kind of life going on up there right now. Let me know what you think in the comment box. And our next episode that I do with Ted, a little bit down the road, will be on the Ganymede hypothesis. Also, look out for Ted's Ganymede Hypothesis Facebook page, which you can find right here. I'll have a link in the description. There's a lot of disinfo out there. There's a lot of people trying to muddy the water on purpose. And there's a few people that when their name is mentioned, I just go the other way because I don't think they're being real. But Ted is real. He's definitely being real. And join us for our next episode, and Ted will elaborate on his Ganymede hypothesis. I like to take a step outside of the norm every once in a while. My guess is you do too. I think we all do. Thanks for watching. Now see you on down the road. Take care.